You heard it right here, right down from the beach.
The new ivory is mammoth.
What do you guys want to know? I've done way too much research on dinosaurs.
Almost a larger-than-life figure.
No reason at all to think it was made by aliens.
Drop down and go swimming as fast as you can. Out of whale.
All these big giants, give me a kiss and tell me they don't.
The crowd, just the pot, the loudness, the excitement, the electricity. I don't know if I can take your little Canadian destroyer.
Future is scary, but it's also wonderful. Welcome back to Unscriptify, a podcast where we ask the questions you actually want to be answered and occasionally make our guests wonder why the hell did they agree to do this in the first place. And today we got a guest who's basically living a real life Jurassic Park, just without the running and screaming, at least not yet. Ben Lamm, the CEO and founder of Colossal Biosciences, a company dedicated to bringing extinct species back to life, species like mammoths, like dodos, and maybe even your childhood pet hamster, if you ask nicely. So imagine that while many of us are still trying to keep a houseplant alive, a group of remarkable people out there is trying to de-extinct the woolly mammoth. So take a sip of your beverage of choice and let's dive into the science, into the vision, and slightly terrifying questions like what happens when extinction isn't permanent anymore? So is this hard for the first question, or should we go with how you doing, Ben?
No, this is good. We can start wherever. I had actually never, we get asked a lot of weird questions. No one has ever asked me to bring back their hamster. So I think that you nailed it on the intro. I think that's a world's first for me.
Not even after woolly mouse. Nothing.
You know, the Woolly Mouse project was interesting because we thought it was a pretty interesting technical proof point, right, of our genome engineering capabilities, the fact that we could produce healthy animals with exactly the phenotypes we wanted or physical attributes, and a proof point on our mammoth project. But we had no idea how crazy people were going to go. People are like buying bootlegged pillows and t-shirts that say legalize woolly mice. It's like, are they illegal? Like, I mean, I got accused on X by China of making it that the woolly mouse is really a bioweapon, and so it was crazy. It went insane, and so the woolly mouse did not get anyone calling me to resurrect their lost pet hamster, but I was just shocked at the feedback that we got worldwide.
Yeah, well, at least as far for China goes, there's probably some basements in Beijing or somewhere having some weirder stuff than woolly mammoths. So
probably.
so, yeah, but let me ask you before many people on the internet maybe don't know: is he a scientist? Is Ben paleontologist? Is he entrepreneur? Who is he? So you are a little bit of all of that, mostly entrepreneur. And you wake up in the morning, and you remember that you are trying to de-extinct mammoths, for example. So are you laughing to yourself how insane is doing this?
My days are pretty weird, right? There's a lot of context switching. So like 1 minute I'll be doing an awesome podcast like this. The next minute I'll be in the lab talking to our team that's working on like an artificial egg construct for like MOAs and how we grow MOAs at scale. So not only are we assuming success that we'll make a MOA, we're trying to figure out, okay, we're assuming we're going to be successful in making a MOA. How do we make 1,000 of them, right? In parallel, right? Without surrogacy. So, and then I'll be doing that. And then I'll be on the phone with like an indigenous peoples group in America talking about like wolf conservation. So I have a pretty varied day-to-day schedule, but to your point, I've always been an entrepreneur and I've always worked with much smarter people than me on these various projects, and I love to learn new things. And so I'm definitely not a scientist. I'm definitely not an engineer. I'm an okay entrepreneur at best, and I think that I just have found the right combination of asking the right questions and hiring smarter people than me to answer those questions in the various projects I work on. But yeah, days at Colossal compared to my previous jobs are pretty weird.
Yeah, so you started company. I mean, Forbes has 3.7 billion reasons to say you are more than okay entrepreneur, but you build and sold companies before, but why this? What's the moment that you decided I want to bring back species that doesn't exist anymore? Is it meeting George Church? Is it that you read something on the internet? When was it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'd say there were 2 points, right? One is I met George Church, and George, if you don't know him, he's the father of synthetic biology. He's super interesting. For as smart as he is, he's 6'7" with narcolepsy, and he's actually hilarious. He's actually funnier than he is smart, and he's pretty damn smart. And so what's interesting though about George is he's just so inspiring, and he doesn't believe in the word impossible. So I met George. He told me about his crazy vision to go do this. And I left and I was like, is he screwing with me? And I stayed up all night, like reading all these stories about him, watching videos and podcasts, listening to things about him. And I was obsessed. And I kind of got that like mammoth fever. And I was like, is it real? Is this a real thing? So I called him back the next day, a week later on his lab. And I was like, wow, this guy really believes he has the technologies and has the know-how to go do this. And it was pretty inspiring. But for me as an entrepreneur, it's like, how do I do this? Well, I started those conversations, I got excited about it, and then COVID happened. And like many people, I was just kind of locked down in my house. I was doing a lot of introspection I'd built a handful of software companies and sold them. And it's like there's got to be more than like building software companies and watching Netflix, right? We got to do something more. And so I got really, really excited, and I was like, maybe I could be the one to go work on this with George, because while I'm not a scientist, I thought I definitely needed some of my skills in terms of like bringing together a team. Look, how do you build a system, and how do you build a whole technology stack that can do this? And then how do we raise enough capital to really go focus on this? And if we're successful, the world's never the same again, right? Like we have an opportunity to not only build some pretty valuable technologies for human healthcare, but we also have an opportunity to like inspire the next generation, and also get them excited about science. And I kind of miss those like Bill Nye days where like you would do cool science experiments. Like I think worldwide, we all did that like old school like volcano where you like put the baking soda and it erupted with food coloring. Those days were cool. I don't hear about those days anymore, right? And so I was like, if we're successful in this, we could do some good work for conservation, we could make some money, but also like we could do something that would get this next generation really stoked about science again. And so for me, it was like the weirdest, hardest project I'd heard on, and I was kind of bored. So I thought, I'll go try this.
Yeah, but in the beginning, when you were pitching this idea, you, George, anybody, you were going, and I believe that you look to people like James Bond villain with all those stories. It's and you probably heard a lot of Jurassic Park jokes along the
once or twice. Yeah.
So how did you manage to pitch this idea all the way to what it is now?
Well, the original pitch was pretty shitty. I mean, I just like being honest, like it was pretty bad. Like it was like, hey, I built a bunch of software companies, and I built some space hardware, but I want to pivot and go into biology, and I know nothing about biology, and we have no scientists, and we don't have a deal with Harvard. But George Church says he can bring back mammoths, and we're pretty sure if he can do that, there's a lot of innovation that can come from that. And it's kind of like the Apollo program. We can make some technologies that like on the way to the moon that could be probably pretty valuable. And so we didn't have the best pitch. We had a pretty awesome team, but a pretty bad pitch because we didn't, you don't know what you don't know. And so we were early days. That's how we were framing it. And we turned out that we got about half of my old school investors were like, this is insane. You should just keep making software. The half of them, the other half were like, yeah, we should try this. Like, why not? Like, if it fails, you can just go back and do software. And so, because I had built a handful of software companies, worst case scenario, I just go back and do that. So it was really, I didn't really look at it as that risky of a proposal.
Yeah. Do you, like not to jump a little bit on the theme, but on the entrepreneurial side, and just the job, the profession of Colossal Biosciences is a rather unique one. There's not a lot of companies that do this kind of stuff. So setting up the whole deal, the company, the process, employing people, and regulation, like it's pretty unique kind of stuff. Is there kind of regulation? Does a regulation on these kind of things exist? Did you figure it out?
It's all over the board, you know, because we're working with so many species on both conservation and on the de-extinction side that have that are in different countries where people have different feelings, right? Like we are creating genetically modified organisms on a primal level. That is what we are doing, right? We are engineering species, and we're almost like, I like to think of it as like we're almost like rebuilding extinct species for today. And so in that, you know, we're doing a lot of genome engineering. Well, some countries, like I think like genome engineering, because they've heard of other companies in the past, like Monsanto and whatnot, and they're worried about like consumption and just in eating those foods for consumption. They're worried about genome engineering, so they don't like genome engineering. Even though genome engineering is pretty awesome, it can do a lot for us. We're not marketing any of our animals for consumption, so we would ask that no one try to eat a direwolf or a mammoth. That would be great. And so we don't really fall into that category, right? But then also some of these other species that we're working on, there's even a spiritual connection, right? And so like the Tasmanian tiger or the thylacine in Australia, it's part of the Aboriginal community's dream state and how the world was created. It was actually part of their, like, you know, mythology and whatnot. So there's like some of these species, there's a deep cultural connection to them. So we have to be cognizant of all of that. You know, when I started the business, we didn't know all of that. We're like, okay, we got to raise money and build a lab. All these other things are things that we learned along the way, which is pretty cool, right? But you know, what's interesting is most people think of us, they think about Jurassic Park, but they really think of us in a lab. We're out doing field work and trying to save elephants in Africa. We're in like the tundra getting samples of mammoths and whatnot, and drilling and excavating and drilling. And then we're meeting with indigenous people groups and tribes in different nations to understand and go through their ceremonies so that we can be a part of them, so we can work on their species. So there is all these different elements to the business that make it super interesting. But every single day, I feel like we learn something new that expands kind of the scope of how we're working on these projects.
Let me hold you a little bit to that thought about the fieldwork and everything, because we had a bunch of paleontologists here, Philip Curry, Paul Sereno, etc., and they are all proud of their fieldwork, and they have some most memorable stories that we got is actually from the fieldwork. So what's maybe the story that you love most to share with your friends, with your partners, etc., from the field? Is there some?
So one of my, so a couple, oh my gosh, there's so many, because when things can really go wrong in the field, right? And so so a couple different field stories. When I was in northern Alaska, we went and actually toured these permafrost caves, right? So these are like the Army Corps of Engineers had actually been had actually drilled into the permafrost. You can actually, you know, you can actually go in and you can see it. And most people think of it as, you know, just like frozen dirt or whatnot, but it's like this silt. It's super fine. It's almost like, you feel like it's like what you'd imagine like moon dust to do, right? And they gave us like, you know, they gave us like a little directions of like, okay, don't touch the walls, don't do all these things, right? And whatnot. And you know, it's kind of like, don't tell a kid to like touch something in a museum, because then they just want to touch it, right? And so we're walking around and whatnot, and it's very silty, right? It's very fine. If you don't pick up your feet and you shuffle around, it actually will cloud up. It's crazy. Well, but there's actually like, you can actually see like mammoth tusk in it. You can see all these different things in it. So I was going down a part of this cave. You know, I'd wandered slightly off the beaten path and left some folks, which was also stupid. Another thing you should never do when you're in a cave is like, or in a permafrost tunnel is wander off. And I went down this thing and I was like, oh my gosh, I think that's a steppe bison. I literally look like a steppe bison. And so I touched it and I was like, oh my gosh, it is, which you're not supposed to do. Right. And then I started like, I started just like messing with it with my hand. My hand's in a glove. It's actually pretty cold in there. Right. So hands in a glove and whatnot. And I did. And then I pushed too far and too hard on it because I was just like trying to excavate what I thought was this horn. Part of the wall completely came down, went all over me, went all in my jacket, went all in my mouth, all this stuff. And this is not like dirt. This is like this is like think of if you could ever make something that was like death dust. That's what this is. It's because it's just thousands of years of death that are piled up, and it's just disgusting. Yeah, and it was in my ears, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, it was like out of a movie, right? It's like out of a movie. And I like got up, I'm like covered in it. I walk around the corner where everyone else is, and I'm just covered in this permafrost silt. It took me like a month to not be able to smell it because it gets in your, it just gets everything. And everyone's like, we fucking told you not to touch anything. Why were you digging on the side of this cave? Right. And it was totally safe and everything. But it was like literally like we had to share, we were in Northern Alaska, so we had to share bunks and rooms. So the rest of the trip, people like I smelled, people didn't want to be near me. It was awful. When I flew back from Alaska, literally the people in the plane next to me were like the strangers were like looking around, smelling like something smells like death. And it was me. And it literally took me like a month to get it out of all my pores and everything. So that was probably one of the dumbest things I did. But I've got 1,000 field stories like that. They're crazy.
Are you worried that you maybe picked up some 1,000-year-old virus?
No. I mean, most people don't know this for my age, but I'm 97. So, I actually look quite good for my age. So
Yeah.
it's I think that I wasn't worried about that, but you're starting to read stories about how there's melting permafrost, all over that has it. But this part was completely silt and it wasn't frozen. In other parts of the cave, you have it where it's completely frozen. You even have sheer ice pieces. So it's a pretty cool experience to go in it. But this part was completely silt, and I think it was put there for 1,000 years just so it could screw with me when I got there.
Yeah. Was that also part of the John Reeves estate, or was it?
No, there's a different place. But I went to John Reeves. John's awesome. I went to the boneyard, and I'm not the tallest person, and John's like, he feels like he's like 9'10". He's like huge. He's like the biggest guy you ever met. And so it wasn't at any of John's locations in the boneyard, but I got a full tour of the boneyard, and not just the bone side, but the gold side and all the stuff that he's doing and the incredible work that he's done. And oh my gosh, they have so many samples. And his story about like how people have stolen his samples it's terrible. It is truly awful because it's kind of a real tragedy because he has so many samples and so much great preserved samples that it's unfortunate that he's not more open to sharing them. But I don't know if I would be either after what happened to a lot of his collection.
Yeah. Yeah. When we spoke to some of the also paleontologists, they spoke about the dinosaur bones that end up on the black market, and it's all they're broken, and how that's a loss, in a not just scientific way, but also in a human way of preservation. You would like to know that such things remain. You mentioned before also the Tasmanian tiger specifically, and it's kind of sad story how the last member of the species went out. He was kept in the zoo, and they didn't take care of him, and he died out. Besides Tasmania, you obviously, it's a goal also the dodo bird. You've been making progress on that we know of. Are there projects that are in the head, and that you're discussing with someone. And did some of the projects maybe get into discussions, but in reality you were like, maybe we should wait on this, maybe this is not the right time, maybe
Yeah,
are there something like that?
we don't have like people ask us a lot, like how do you select a species, right? And we don't have this like specific checklist that's like it has to meet this criteria, right? We try to think about like what are the ecological implications of doing it. We also think, is it possible, right? Like a great example of that is the stellar sea cow. It's a whale-sized manatee. I don't think it's not scary. It's not a megalodon, so I don't think anyone would be scared of it. It was apparently a giant docile creature that we killed. We as humans, not colossal, we as humans killed out within I think it was like 30 or 50 years after it was discovered. It was already extinct, right? Because it was huge, got lots of blubber, got lots of fat, and so I think no one would have a problem bringing it back. But there's nothing to gestate it in. The calves when they're born are bigger than manatees, so you can't put it in a manatee, right? It wouldn't work. And so until we get artificial wombs and other things right, there are certain species like that we can't do. So we do think, is it viable? Is a part of it? What are the conservation applications? What are the technical challenge? Like, how does this help us build a bigger, robust synthetic biology technology stack that we can use for genome engineering, for conservation, for healthcare, for all these things? So how does it help kind of our long-term mission of the core technology stack that we're building? And then are there cultural applications? Like, are there indigenous people groups? Are there people that are excited about this? When we did, and then there's other things that we didn't really think about until we started working on projects like the direwolf, which is most people thought the direwolf was like a mythical creature. They're like, we saw it in Game of Thrones, we saw it in, Magic the Gathering or World of Warcraft, but it was in a lot of fantasy things. But people were like, oh, that was a mythical creature. But in reality, it wasn't. And so we thought that there was this extra layer on that project, which is like, we could help bring fantasy followers and people that love the show and others into science and into wolf conservation. So we kind of thought, oh, there's this new kind of layer that we learned from the direwolf project, which is like, are there cultural aspects and kind of pop cultural aspects outside of like the indigenous cultural aspects that could be applied to the project that would get people excited about science, right? And so we kind of had this like weird 3-dimensional model of like how we think about species. But yeah, we talk about all kinds of weird stuff here.
Unicorns.
Yeah. Do what?
Unicorns, for example.
Yeah.
We've
maybe engineer that one internally, but there are people that believe unicorns existed, and so we try to keep Colossal focused as a de-extinction company, right, and a species preservation company. If someone shows me definitive evidence that a unicorn existed, and there's DNA from it, then I would consider it as a de-extinction project. But no one has yet shown up with unicorn DNA and proven to me that unicorns are real. There was something, it's kind of cool. There was an animal called the Siberian. Have you seen the Siberian unicorn? Have you seen that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. And so it's like a giant, like rhino, single horn. There's kind of more in the head. So doesn't look like the My Little Pony version of a unicorn as we think about like a horse. It looks like the biggest, most terrifying. It looks like the monster, version of like the monarch version of what we think of a unicorn. But yeah, until people show me that unicorns are real, I can't ethically get behind the working on them.
Yeah, but even unicorn is not so much special because it's just this is pop culture speaking now. It's just the horse with the horn, because you have, like you said, rhinos. You have giraffes, which are more fascinating to me. You have a horse with 2 meters long necks, so that's more fascinating from nature than actual unicorns. So.
Yeah, giraffes are super weird. Like, I don't think giraffes can have credit for just how weird they are.
Yeah,
they look like something like out of a movie. People are like, oh, it's just a giraffe. I mean, that thing looks pretty weird. So.
Yeah, and the elephants are underratedly weird as well.
Yeah, they have an extra super nose arm. How weird is that? That's the weirdest thing of all time. So.
Yeah, it is. But you mentioned direwolves earlier. This was one of the projects that totally broke the internet, all the headlines, everything. George Martin involved. So how are they doing now? They are
So this is it's great that we're doing this today. It's their 1-year-old birthday.
really.
They're 1-year-old. They're 1-year-old today. We just announced it. 1 years old today. Well, we have 3 of them, but 2 of them, it's their 1-year-old birthday. Romulus and Remus. They're doing great. They're over 120 pounds. We actually made them a birthday cake.
Oh, nice.
We worked with
Made
this
of
firm
what?
and oh, it's got meat and all kinds of stuff in it. We just did a press release about it today because we hadn't worked with this bakery in San Francisco where they actually made a custom diet, like our animal operations team worked with them to come up with like the right fabrication. And we gave them a 1-year-old birthday. And so they celebrated their birthday this morning, which is kind of cool.
Oh,
So they're doing great. They're doing awesome. They're thriving. They continue to grow, which is exciting and terrifying at the same time. Remus. So it's interesting. So Romulus was the technically the firstborn, and Romulus was a little bit has always been a little bit bigger. And Remus, his brother's like a little, just this very, very slightly smaller, but slightly, but it is a little bit smaller. A couple pounds smaller, maybe an inch smaller, but you know, a little, generally same scale, but just a teeny bit smaller. But what's been interesting is that Romulus was like the really big alpha and kind of leader for a while, and then they completely did a role reversal, and so Remus is now the kind of like pack lead, more bold, more confident, and they're starting. And this is great for, you know, it's not great if you want to be like their best friends, but if you care about the animal welfare and stuff, like it's great for them. They're starting they've moved from that like goofy puppy stage into like true wolf stage, right? So last time I was in the ecological preserve with them that we have them on, when I moved, they were a little bit more jumpy. They moved that, their heads were down, kind of like eyeing you. They're behaving more and more appropriately for, an adolescent wolf, which is great. They just did like Remus just got his first kill. He caught a rabbit on the preserve, and we had it on the drone, and we captured all of it, which was really cool. So they're starting to do they're starting to exhibit their hunting behavior. We've done some really cool socialization where we've actually in the process of moving from like bottle feeding to wet and dry food to wet food to shared carcass feeding, so that they could actually have social dynamics of how they learn how they eat together and how they share and are aggressive with each other, and also do social food play. So there's a lot of cool things that they've started to exhibit, and I just want to give a huge shout out to Matt James and our chief animal officer and our animal team, because caring for these are probably some of the most looked after animals. They have a 10-person support team, animals on the planet, but also having to like build protocols and around the species is unique, right? It's never been done before, so it was pretty cool. It's been really cool to watch their adolescent and social development, and then also watch the humans on the team and how they've been able to interact with that.
Yeah, I bet you get a lot of weird calls, probably people wanting to see them, to be there, etc. So it's completely closed for the public, or
Yeah. So we learned our lesson with the woolly mouse, right? So we launched the woolly mice, and we jokingly named 2 of them Chip and Dale, and people like we had I'm not being negative, our offices aren't, and our labs aren't open to the general public. We had people just show up to our lab that wanted to see Chip and Dale, that they were just so excited to see them. And I was like, and so we had to like, manage that. And so we're like, yeah, there's Game of Thrones fans. Maybe we won't disclose exactly where they are. And so we we've tried to keep it pretty locked down.
Smart
No,
move.
yeah,
But I'm curious. They are currently in this adolescence. They are hunting.
Mhm.
Are those specimens, are Romulus and Remus and Khaleesi meant to be set in the natural habitat to roam freely in the, or are
So
they
they're in
just
a,
for
it's a
the-
great it's a great question, and they're in a 2,000 acre secure expansive preserve, right? And
Mhm.
so ecological preserve. So they live a pretty wild, free life, right? They're not like like everyday, like they
Yeah.
live pretty free. There's about 5.5, 6 acres of that 2,000 acres where we've got an animal hospital. We've got a storm shelter for extreme weather. We've actually built dens throughout this area so that they can go into it. And so, they venture out more and more and they come back and whatnot. But we've tried to give them a pretty, transition them to a pretty wild life. All the species that we're working on, we have to work with the government, indigenous people groups, private landowners, you have the public at large on how you rewild these species, right? And so most rewilding cases go through this like stage gated process, right? So it's not like sometimes people get worried because they hear not even about not just about colossal, but other things where they say, oh, you make these animals, you breed wolves or you make bears or whatever, and then you just like open the gates. That's not how rewilding works.
Yeah.
It's a very managed, stage gated process where you go from a human managed care facility to a larger preserve, to a larger preserve, to a larger preserve, right? And so, and then seemingly wild. And so, Ramos and Remus and Khaleesi, and we are going to be engineering a few more direwolves to fill out the rest of the pack. They will live a seemingly wild environment on this preserve, but there it may be that future generations do get put back in a larger component of the wild. But that's really up to other people, right?
Yeah.
We are working with some indigenous people groups that would like them back on their sovereign land, because they have a spiritual connection to this species.
Yeah, there's a lot of legal questions, I believe, especially with
Yeah.
government, like you mentioned, because I'm also curious if Colossal pulls this off. One of the goals is to reintroduce them to the ecosystem, to make them again part of it. So in this, if government says yes, you say no, or vice versa, and also questions like who owns the rights? Is it the public good or is it property of Colossal?
Anytime
Is
you do
this-
something like this that is big and bold, it has to be collaborative. It has to be a
Yeah.
shared responsibility, right? Like I don't think that we can just say and do whatever we want. I don't think the government should say and do whatever we want. I think you've got to take all these different voices into account, right? And so we try to be thoughtful that one of the things that I think we've done a really good job of is we build these like working groups in country or in states, depending on what the species is, around these projects. Not even just the de-extinction projects, but also a lot of the conservation projects. So we have like a Mauritian advisory board, and if you just go into like colossal.com/Mauritius, you'd see like how we're thinking about and how we're working with a very big cross section of people, including governments, those indigenous people groups, private landowners, people from ecologists, conservationists, people from academia. We try to build a pretty diverse cross function of people that can then help us think through all the intended and unintended consequences. And so, even though we don't have things like Tasmanian tigers and dodos and stuff like that now, we've already worked on building that framework from day one.
Yeah. And also, sorry, Luke.
It'll take longer for us to rewild certain species than it will to even be able to bring them back, which is interesting in itself. It tells you a lot about us as humans, right?
Yeah. It does. It does.
Do you think, obviously, because you mentioned a few times, there's an learning process in your job for conservations, for sciences, medicines, and similar. Do you think ultimately that's the colossal's goal, like a main goal, that through the extinction is a part of reaching that higher almost standard where we can understand maybe climate change better and preserving the species better ultimately, and this is like a product of it.
So we have, it's a great question. The way I think about it is if you take it back, the loss of biodiversity, the loss of biodiversity crisis, climate change, all this. If you take out everything from Colossal and you strip all that narrative away, fundamentally we care about doing three things. We care about creating an impact. I think that will be some on ecosystems. I think that will be some on protecting species. I think that will be some on building technologies that can help conservation, like we did with our EHV vaccine for elephants and others. So I think there's impact. The second is inspiration, right? It's like, yeah, like I said about the volcano stuff, like I really want this next generation to get excited about science. We need big moonshots. We need to do cooler things, right? Like we have an opportunity, and I'd say a moral obligation to push humanity forward from a technology. Like we should live in this future that we see on the movies and TV and stuff like that, right? And reading books. And so I think second is inspiration, and then the third is creating value, because we do have investors, right? So it's like those are like all the technology spin outs. That's the core end-to-end platform that we're trying to build in terms of like what it can do for synthetic biology. And so I think for us, hopefully we will create, measurable success in multiple categories, like ecosystems or climate, and even learning about biology as a component of our impact vertical, or hopefully we'll have a true kind of resounding effect on the next generation through kind of like our inspiration vertical, and hopefully the work that we're doing will create a lot of value that we kind of measure through our value. And so really those key performance indicators that we look across each one of those sections, I think will be slightly different, but I think they'll fundamentally fall within kind of that respective category.
Well, let me put it like this as well. I'm bringing a little bit on the personal. 100 years apart from now, your great grandkids are maybe listening to this episode of the podcast, and Colossal is being remembered not for bringing back the mammoths, but for something completely different for the future generation. What do you hope that is?
Yeah, I hope that we inspire people to protect biodiversity in nature, right? And I think they always say that like dinosaurs are like the gateway drugs for kids to science. Yeah. I hope that like de-extinction and mammoths are like, the gateway drugs for not just for kids of all ages, from like 2 to 92, or if longevity stuff works, like 500, 2 to 500 years old. I hope that it really does inspire people and it becomes the gateway drug for protecting biodiversity. So I really think we're seeing that in the reach and the numbers and the excitement. And every single week we get like parents and kids like sending us letters or drawing pictures of mammoths and whatnot.
Yeah. Do you I'm of the opinion that in spite of wherever someone drifts politically or similar, we're all environmentalists to a sense. Because
whether we like it or not, we have to be.
Yeah, because no sane person wants to drink dirty water, breathe the polluted air, walk in the environment that has no greenery in it and similar. So to a sense, we're all environmentalists. And to that part, obviously you've been someone that's been around the world in these efforts. And unfortunately, we do hear on the climate change stuff usually a lot of bad news, but there are good news as well,
Yeah.
Do you see good news happening, in nature?
Yeah. So a couple things. One is to the first part of what your statement was. We really have America, believe it or not, is pretty polarizing right now. You get half the population and the other half hates the other half of the population. But
We heard.
yeah, it's the rumors, right? But what's interesting is like it seems to your point on regardless of people's views of climate change, which we'll get to, I do think that people agree philosophically that like
Yeah.
more biodiversity and more animals is a good thing. I think different here in the United States, whether you're right or left, generally speaking, people are like animals are good, plants are good. We should just destroy all those things, right? And so people have different ideas of how you protect them and whatnot, and what you should and shouldn't protect. So that gets politicized. But I think generally speaking, we've seen on both sides of the aisle people saying, yeah, losing animals is bad. Like they generally will accept that statement. On the climate side, I'm a technology optimist, so I'm always pretty hopeful. I'm pretty excited. I believe in the general goodness of humanity and people, and so for me, I think that we have a moral obligation and duty to protect what we have and to do it. Now, I believe that the current, and based on all the models I've seen, the current conservation models and whatnot don't work at the speed of, while they work, they don't work at the speed at which we're eradicating the planet or changing things. So we need new tech. But I was recently at this speaking at this Aspen Institute, and I listened to a couple other talks. I always like to listen to really smart people. And there's a gentleman that gave a very terrifying talk, which said, in this 24-hour news cycle that we have, we are constantly preaching to the next generation nothing but bad news and nothing but doom and gloom, because that gets the clickbait, right?
Yeah.
And what we found is, you would think, oh, that would motivate people to like get off the couch and go work on stuff. We've actually found, and we as human, not Colossal, that psychologists have identified that this actually drives more not just depression and loneliness, but it actually drives indecision and inaction. And so so we're seeing the next generation be less hopeful because they're not being preached any hope. And so, I don't believe that Colossal by itself is going to end extinction. I don't think that we are going to be an answer for all conservation. But I hope that we are simply one thread, hopefully a pretty cool and colorful one, in a larger tapestry of many threads that have to come together to solve these really hard challenges. And I hope that we give like someone an excitement about science or hope or whatnot. And I hope we bring awareness to some of these big existential threats like loss of biodiversity or climate change. And it seems like we are making progress on that. We get all kinds of feedback, both positive and negative. But I feel like fundamentally that message is getting to that next generation. And I think that message of hope is just really, really important.
Mhm. Like you said, but like you said, people are polarized in politics, in this and that, as well. Maybe in public perception of things like Colossal is doing for biodiversity and everything, because some of them think this is dangerous, this is genius. So when you apply that, let's a little bit connected to the study you're mentioning. If you apply that headlines, this is dangerous, this is copycat, this is that, this is that.
Yeah.
Is it slowing down the process? And how is this is genius, they did this, they did that, motivating your team on the field?
Yeah, it's a very valid point. I view it, and we try to have a culture here of transparency, and we have a company policy that it's not our job to persuade anyone. It's not our job to sell anyone. We don't sell anything. Our job is to like really just educate people. And so most of the negative arguments that we get are uninformed critics. And so that just means that we have to do a better job of educating them and informing them. And what we found is, if you take that approach and you don't try to sell them or persuade them, and you really just try to educate them on what they're doing wrong, or what they just don't know, they then can easily come to your sense of mind, because it is a like the all of the benefits far outweigh the risk. And I'm also a data and math guy, right? And so when I look at this, generally speaking, across the board, we're about 95% positive or neutral feedback, 5% super negative. But given the numbers that we have, we over like 58,000 stories about us, 5% of a 58,000 is still a decent sized number, right? So you still get you still get those negative headlines, but like, I take it as a really an opportunity to educate. We do see people that just get stuck in their views, and they don't. And then what becomes clear is like when you do educate them and you give them the data, they don't. It's not about changing their mind, but they just don't want to consider it. And I think that closed-minded view, you're never going to change those people's perspectives. And I think the thing that we do that's probably most frustrating to our biggest critics is we tell them that they have a right to their opinion because we believe in free speech. And sometimes like they're like, no, but we want you to believe what we believe. It's like, well, that's okay, but we just don't. And we can gracefully, respectfully agree to disagree. And so that's just the attitude that we've had. And there's way far more positive perspectives out there than the negatives, but I think it's only natural to have some negative people out there. And what's interesting though is some of the most negative headlines out there that of these people that try to write hit pieces about the business or me, they've actually driven the most engagement for us, where they've actually pushed people more towards our side. And so I kind of joked once, which they didn't think was very funny, about that, like if they could make the headlines more salacious, it would actually help me more. But they didn't like that.
That's not ethical from you.
They were mad at me because I wasn't mad at them, which is kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Do you obviously we spoke about besides science, Colossal is a big company that has to deal, obviously, as you mentioned, with the media, with the regulatory stuff, with the not so fun parts, obviously, as the pure science. And on that note, obviously, and you as an entrepreneur know all about the setbacks and lack of enthusiasm. Does the company still maybe experience that to some level? Maybe at some points a lack of something, enthusiasm, setbacks?
We are just so convicted on our mission, and I think that our team, we've done a really good job internally of lifting each other up, both from the top down and the bottom up. And I think that we're just so focused and convicted on our mission that any of that other stuff just becomes noise. And we sometimes laugh about it, but for the most part, I think that we've done a really good job of curating and cultivating this incredible team of women and men that are like so mission focused and so convicted that nothing really makes them wobble. They're all so they're all just so tuned in to the plan.
So while you are there playing God, just kidding. What are some? I'll play dirty a little bit here and ask you to ask yourself a question, because journalists ask you many things, podcasters ask you many things. What are some questions that you do not want to be asked anymore, or what is the question on the other side that nobody asked you so far, but you wish them to?
Oh, great! This is awesome. So I don't. I am very comfortable and I'm very fine if people want to debate the applications of de-extinction technologies to conservation. Where I struggle and where I get somewhat frustrated is when we stand up a colossal foundation whose focus is which says 70, 80 partners around the world on conservation. It's raised $50 million for conservation that gives it away, and where we open source all of our technologies for conservation, and we have a button on our website in our main menu that says conservation. It is sometimes frustrating when people say, but you should do stuff for conservation, because I'm like, well, why didn't you click on the button that says conservation? That's the part I think that I get the most frustrated about. I'm fine if people say we think that you should be doing different things for conservation, because even if I disagree with that, at least there's an acknowledgement of it. Like sometimes people want to put these blinders on and just like ignore all of the great work we do for conservation. And so if people say, oh, well, you shouldn't say this species, you shouldn't work on the northern white rhino, you should work on the southern black rhino, like, okay, that's fair. But like when these people put these blinders on and they pretend like we don't do anything in conservation, or that they act surprised, like, wait, we're just so surprised you do something with it. It's like we say it every day. Says on our website. That's the one that always drives me the most crazy, because it's not about their right to their opinion on whether we should be doing it or shouldn't be doing it, or if we should be doing it a different way or for a different species. They're entitled to that opinion, but the blatant disregard for like the facts drives me insane. That's number one. The second question, so that's the thing. The question that I get asked, the question that I don't get asked enough is all the application, or that I wish people would ask more, is, that the art of the possible, like where do these technologies take us? Most people don't want to focus on that. They just want to focus on like a mammoth or some conservation. Very few though want to focus on conservation, but they just want to focus on that kind of stuff, right? They like the pop culture aspect, they like the education side, but they never ask about like, where is this going? And I really believe that synthetic biology and this idea that we can do directed evolution and we can do genome engineering, I think this is the most valuable technologies that we as humanity have ever discovered and engineered. And I think it's significantly more dangerous in some categories, like bioweapons versus nuclear weapons. I think it's more hopeful in other categories where it's like, how do we engineer certain species to live in the environments that we create? How do we get rid of plastics? How do we build technologies that can like affect human healthcare and like, help people with debilitating diseases? So I'm very excited and respectful of these technologies, but I sometimes don't think that people ask the right questions on the power of what these technologies truly represent long term.
Mhm. I get it. Obviously, now that you're speaking, you mentioned those applications, those technologies, amazing that you're building, and you mentioned earlier as well that your goal with this is to inspire people, to pursue what they saw in the books, what they saw in the movies, those ideas that human mind.
We should live in a sci-fi future. Like we should work on all these things. Like, we don't need another podcast platform. We don't need another Zoom. We don't need another we don't need another social media platform, right? Like we got a lot of those and they're great. But we need cooler, bigger things that can, I think, inspire the next generation and also like push humanity forward. Like, don't you want to see like Mars in your lifetime? Like, don't we want to like build crops that feed the world? And like we have all these tools to do it. It's just sometimes humanity's focus is just on dumb shit.
Yeah, but that's exactly because there's a part of me, in a little bit of cynicism. Why bother if you're gonna die anyway in the million years? So, but to that.
Yeah, but I mean, look, there's a lot to do on this planet. There's a lot to do in this universe. If you could live to be 1,000,000, there's a lot of shit you can do before you die.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the part of it. But also to that, those technologies, like going to Mars and maybe saving the food and in the survival of human species.
No, just browsing. Thank you.
Oh, Emily went off mute. Can you hear us?
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, right.
Do you think that Colossal in 5-10 years maybe will be cooperate with some of those maybe people that bring those ideas, and together these technologies will maybe merge and create something?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. I do think, I hope so. I mean, we're pretty collaborative, right? We got 95 scientific advisors. We fund 17 different academic partners around the world. We fund 60 students in academia. And you know, we have like a 70 or 80 conservation partners. So we try to be very collaborative. So we would welcome that, right? And I really think that you will see convergence of these technologies. Like, I believe myself and Chris Mason, George Church, and a few others had a paper that was in Nature or Science about like we're not doing this. Colossal is not doing this, and we don't work on humans. We had a paper on genome engineering in humans for long duration space travel, right? I do think that synthetic biology and access to AI and access to compute and all these combination of technologies together will converge. And I think it will enable things like, you know, we are going to need radiation tolerant, you know, plants and animals for off-world living. You know, we are going to have to do geoengineering on our planet. I think that there's a big opportunity for us to collaborate with everyone from like SpaceX and NASA and Blue Origin to, you know, how do we repair ecosystems from like the mining companies? How do you work with, how do we do stuff like with people like ExxonMobil and the big oil companies as it relates to plastic degradation? So I really think that the lens of synthetic biology and what it can do, very much like AI, can be applicable to so many different industries and those thought leaders in the biggest industries out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let me take you a little bit to the current projects from the future and everything. I thought about one question about direwolves. For example, the female one, Khaleesi, is she meant to mate with other direwolves?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we manage that. So we actually track estrus cycles. We track all those things. And so we actually are not allowing them to breed at this time. We really want to manage the population. But then we also will have, we will be engineering more, right? And so we're tracking, we want to understand full pack dynamics, full pack socialization. We want to understand that and really manage the population. You know, so that is something that our animal care team's on. So we're not letting them breed. We are managing it.
Yeah. And what about dodo project, mammoth project? Those have some forecasts about them. Are they?
Yeah. So the dodo, so mammoth project's on. So we're in the editing phase of the mammoth project. It's going quite well. We're still trying to get to end of 2028 for our first calves, which feels like tomorrow. It feels like really close. And we're making phenomenal progress, right? Like we've kind of validated our edits. We're in the editing process. The dodo project was a really hard one because no one had the creating. You have to do a slightly different process. So you have to create primordial germ cells, like the precursor to egg and sperm, because you can't do this cloning step like you can do in the mammalian work, right? And so you have to actually kind of like engineer egg and sperm, and then have them and have two birds, genetically modified birds, mate. And so with those edited sperm eggs, it's kind of weird and cool and interesting, right? Like two chickens mate, and then it lays an egg and it hatches, and it's a dodo. Right? That's like the best magic trick ever, right? And so so David Copperfield, take notes. And so it is something that's pretty cool. And I do think that with that though, no one had created primordial germ cells in pigeons because the culture conditions in cultivating them is very, very difficult. And so it had been 20 years to go from chicken to geese, the second species. We did it in about 18 months, which was pretty awesome. But it really needed that step, because if it took us 20 years to get to primordial germ cells, then we're not gonna have a dodo in 5 years, right? And so now that we've done it, you know, I think we need at least 6 months of editing runway to understand a true timeline. But I think that our current estimate is 5 to 7 years. I'd like to pull that in, but because just because I'm bullish. But I do think that you know, we feel very comfortable with that timeline, given progress that's being made, and hopefully the next 6 months we'll be able to refine that a little bit better.
Mm. When we see Dodo, hopefully in person, and the woolly mammoth, hopefully, and with the direwolves and with Tasmanian tiger.
There'll be more. Like, you know, we're currently evaluating. We're always evaluating more stuff that we're working on, right?
Yeah.
It's like more.
What would be your favorite?
You know, I think that's so I'll answer any question that you throw at me except that one, because we've got incredible species teams, and the last thing I need is someone saying, "Well, I heard you on a podcast say the Tasmanian tiger was your favorite." I don't need that. Like, I'll take anything else. I can't pick a favorite because it's not fair to the teams.
Yeah. They'll think of favoritism. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the most ridiculous misconception that you have ever had to clear up about yourself, Colossal, either privately or publicly?
So when we launched the direwolves, actually when we launched the woolly mouse and then it got worse with the direwolves, there was this crazy journalist that was like, the first that was like crazy accusations. Like, the first accusation was that, like, this is a secret government lab, and that was all like, and these are all like, we're really working on human cloning and hybridization with animals. So we heard all that, which was just I was like, you're confusing us with China. But that was insane. So we had that was like a thread. Then that same person said, "Oh, he really works with the FBI and the CIA and all this other stuff." So then there was that thread, which is insane. And then they thought that we had gone into the wild and captured woolly mice and captured and that we knew of a secret location. This is a true story. They thought we knew of a secret location of Arctic wolves that were bigger and stronger and fluffier and had the cranial, had all the things the direwolves had, and we really just kidnapped them. And because we really weren't a genome engineering company, we're a secret wolf kidnapping company. So it was insane. So we get a couple of those like conspiracy folks around us occasionally.
Yeah, that would be a nice show after Joe Rogan.
Yeah, we get a lot of them, and what's funny though is, like, once again, it doesn't, like, when they make these crazy accusations and we laugh about it, they then get mad, but they're just so ludicrous. You can't even begin to take them seriously, right? So it's like they're like, Colossal won't debate us on this, and I was like, because it's insane. It's like yeah, so we'd rather just laugh about it, which I think sometimes actually makes it worse, because we should probably be better at it. We sometimes make fun of it on social media and it gets us in trouble. But we try to have a lighthearted, the world's too weird and dumb. Like, we try to have a more lighthearted perspective to this. We're trying to do cool things. We're trying to help animals. We're trying to get kids excited about science. If you don't like that, that's okay. Just quit calling us.
Yeah, no, yeah. But that would be an interesting job, you must admit. Kidnapping animals, setting up the company, to
good for Netflix plot. Yeah.
I mean,
it's a new secret wolf napper show.
Yeah, absolutely. Perhaps one of the last few from me. You are also, this may not be worrisome to people listening, but it's kind of a big deal. You're a member of the Explorers Club, which, by the way, Buzz Aldrin was, and Neil Armstrong, and obviously Roy Chapman Andrews, and folks like that. And you does that kind of being member of such does those little accolades like that, do they mean to you?
Well, I mean, like, I don't have a lot of hobbies. Like, I really like what I do. I don't have a lot of hobbies. I now have a 15-month-old son, and so he's like my only hobby. And then my other hobby before this was always exploration. So I've always loved, field work. I've always loved kind of the search for the unknown, right? And so the Explorers Club has been a really great organization, and I was very honored to be elected to not just it, but to the board of trustees. So I'm very, very involved in it. And it's such an incredible community of explorers around the world, and they've really opened up and helped us. Like, they've got us in with museums and samples and expeditions to go get us. Like some of our biggest advisors at the company are from the Explorers Club, right? Like Kenneth Lacavare, he's the #1 paleontologist in the world. He's incredible. He discovered Dreadnoughtus, the largest dinosaur ever. He's awesome. And so we've been very fortunate. And so, I'm very humbled and appreciative of the organization that they let me be in. And it's been an honor. And, it is cool, some of the things that we've been able to do at the company, and some of the recognition that we do get, like some of the work that we got, like with our blood cloning work and others with time and others, has been really cool.
Mm. We mentioned before recording the Montenegro, and we are still really proud that you know about it, actually. And
I've said it like numerous times. Like, I gotta get smart. Like, I'm serious.
now you are obliged to do it. So
Yeah, I'm doing it. I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do it. I want to do Montenegro, Albania. I want to do the whole coast. I'm very excited about it.
yeah, we'll be waiting for you. But before that, we have a little tradition, because podcast originating from Montenegro. We like to share a little bit of Montenegrin culture wisdom at the end of every episode, where we have a quote from one of the popular ex-Yugoslavians, Montenegrin writers, rulers, etc. And for this episode, Luca prepared a quote that I don't know which it is. So go on.
Yeah, I prepared a quote from ex-Yugoslavian writer Miloš Crnjanski, and I think it will round up nicely the conversation. On our language, it says, nada je najviši stepen mudrosti u ljudskom životu. And on English, it would say, hope is the highest degree of wisdom in human life.
That's awesome. That is really awesome.
You'll hear a lot of that language soon.
No, thank you for sharing that. That's all. That is awesome. But I agree with that. We need new things. We need hope. We need to inspire the next generation, and we want like people to do. I want people to do inspiring things. And we're not going to do everything right. We're going to try our best. That's all we can do. And I'm inspired by what a lot of other folks are doing, and I've got a lot of hope for biodiversity and climate and everything.
Ben, I hope we had you interested in this hour and something.
No, this was great. I love it. Thank you for the interest and the time. I always love talking to new folks, and I am serious. I do want to come to Montenegro, so I'm gonna make you guys take me around. So,
well, listen, when you come, we're gonna do an episode in real studio, in real life.
I love that.
And you'll have a great lunch. I promise.
I love that. Deal. And we'll go to the party by the bay. So I'm all in.
Yes, over the edge.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, I really appreciate it. You guys have a great day.
You do.
Too.
All right. Bye, everyone.